Howdy, my name is David Cobb. I use he, him pronouns. I am speaking to you from Wiyot ancestral territory in what is now called far northern California. A hat tip to our friends and comrades and colleagues in the San Francisco area. We are the real Northern California. I am coming to you closer to the Oregon border than I am to San Francisco. It is my distinct pleasure to welcome you to Decolonizing Economics from Earth Day to May Day. I serve as the co-coordinator of the U.S. Solidarity Economy Network. This is our opening session for 3 packed days to go deep on this historical moment and to really ask ourselves, how do we decolonize? How do we return to the balance that once existed on planet Earth? And a reminder, we're all descendants of indigenous people. It is our birthright to be in balance with one another and nature. That has been stolen from us by an oppressive power over system. For the next 3 days, we're going to be asking, how do we get back to the balance that we so richly deserve and so desperately need? Our first panel and our first presenter is Marnie Atkins. Marnie is on faculty at College of the Redwoods. She is associate faculty there. She is also the secretary of the Wiyot Tribal Council, and she is a personal friend. It is my distinct pleasure to welcome Marnie Atkins.
Thank you. Who? Ayuki, Ayukui, De Lohan, Hey Young, Hotwatlow. Welcome all. Reitnak Marnie Atkins, Yil Sul, Yil Wiat, Jaru Gigi, Dadadalish. I wanted to start today by not only welcoming you, but I also wanted to acknowledge where we are right now. I know we're coming from all over the place, but my tribal council back in 2021 did a land acknowledgement. And that might sound kind of weird since we're on our ancestral lands. Um, but for lack of a better word, we wanted to acknowledge what has happened with the colonization and genocide and the occupation of this continent. Um, and to do that, I'm going to take a drink of water because I'm a little nervous. Thank you. um, we created this land acknowledgement, and I'm going to read it to you today. We acknowledge that we are living and working on the unceded territory of the Wiyot people. Most present-day Wiyot people are enrolled with the Wiyot tribe, but some Wiyot descendants can be found at the Bear River Band of Ronerville Rancheria, the Blue Lake Rancheria, and Trinidad Rancheria. The division of Wiyot people's families and lands is a direct result of colonization and genocide inflicted upon Wiyot people. These same impacts are experienced by millions of other indigenous peoples living across this continent and world, if you will. Wiyot people remain engaged and involved in reciprocal relationship with the lands, waterways, airs, plants, and animals of our ancestral homelands. Our ancestral homelands range from Plut Gossamalium, you may know it as Little River, in the north to Tzakiwit. In the south, you may know that as Bear River Ridge. From Shu'ur, the ocean, in the west to the first set of Kus, hills or mountains to the east. Waterways in the ancestral lands of Wiyot people include Batawat, Ikshari, Wiyot, Gidagadalish, and Wigi. Wiyot ancestral lands are surrounded by the traditional, ancestral, and present homelands of several indigenous nations, including the Tolowa, Karuk, Yurok, Hupa, Cholula, Wilkut, Matole, Nongadal, Lassik, Sinkyone, and Wailaki, who also reside in what is now known as Humboldt County, California. The Wiyot tribe commits to supporting tribal neighbors in their efforts to reclaim, revitalize, and relearn their respectful ancestral languages, cultural practices, traditional knowledges, and, when appropriate, will ally and advocate on projects that support our tribal neighbors' health and well being. Uh, I think it's important to acknowledge that as a sovereign tribal government, we have the ability to make these proclamations, if you will. We have that inherent right as self-governing peoples to do that, and I think as tribal peoples we need to continue to do that more often because it reifies our way of leading, our leadership, our traditional forms of government, and I think acknowledges our neighbors and shows that respect to them and the long-term relationships we have had, both historically, culturally, traditionally, with through trade and marriage and even warfare at times, right? Um, so this was our way as a tribal government, as a tribal nation, to acknowledge those folks that are around us, and maybe that we don't often hear about anymore, but that are still here. They've and their descendants are here. They just may not have a tribal government that represents them, but they are still here. Uh, Erasure was not, fortunately, in some cases, as vast as has been claimed. So some of us are luckier than others. Anyway, that's all I'm going to say for now. I thank you for having me here. And I just want to say to all of the organizers, you rock the Casbah. I don't know, is that still a saying, that song, right? You are awesome. And thank you for all of your hard work. And I'm going to be quiet now. Thank you.
How, Marnie Atkins, it is always such a pleasure to see you, to hear from you. I also want to take this opportunity to thank KMUD News, who is simulcasting us live, one of the most kick-ass community radio stations in the country, and I said that before I moved to Humboldt County, uh, and Free Speech TV News, who you may be watching us after the fact as we come together. The next speaker, the next panelist really, is Tony Silvaggio. Tony is chair of the Department of Sociology at Cal Poly Humboldt. I reckon that will come up through the course of the next 3 days. Tony is also the vice president of the California Faculty Association. And I want to get this right. The single largest higher education union for faculty of four-year institutions in the United States of America. And I might say, in my experience, probably the most powerful and also kick-ass union that's stepping up for these student occupations across the country. So love to our siblings, our brothers, sisters, and gender nonconforming CFA members. Tony is also on the board of the Environmental Protection Information Center. He serves on the Central Labor Council, and once again, a personal friend of mine. Tony Silvaggio, welcome to Decolonizing Economics.
Thank you for that wonderful introduction, David, and welcome everyone to this is the 5th annual conference here. I'm coming to you from the territory, the Wiyot people here in Northern California, as David points out. Like he said, I'm a teacher, a labor organizer, environmental organizer, and I'm here to talk about decolonizing economics. I fundamentally believe that the economic, social, and environmental justice, these are all connected and they intersect. And in order for us to build stronger communities, we really need to center Indigenous wisdom, Indigenous perspectives, and Indigenous knowledges. So this conference, this is my 5th year helping organize it. It's really an attempt to bring together people like yourselves who are radically imagining and co-creating a truly transformative world. So the events that we're hosting here, at the summit are really an attempt to make this happen, and I'm really honored to be part of this gathering. As I said, I've had the privilege to work with David and Nicola and the organizing team here of the summit since its inception in 2020, where we actually met in person on campus at the Humboldt State, at the time Humboldt State University, for 2 days of workshops and conversations, originally to devise strategies to create an explicitly post-capitalist society using the framework of the solidarity economy. From the beginning, this summit centered on this topic of solidarity, of cooperation, of mutualism, of equity in all dimensions of racial, ethnic, nationality, class, gender, sexual orientation, of the concepts of participatory democracy and sustainability. Our focus has really been to strengthen and help strengthen existing organizations, especially those doing solidarity economy work. And in addition to that, to really create a space for organizations to share what's working, best practices, and to collaborate across the issues that we work on and constituencies that we work with towards collective liberation. So these were the initial goals of this summit, right? To co-create next steps and how we can implement liberatory and cooperative economic practices in our communities. So we featured panels, performances, skill shops for the last 4 years, and the different approaches that organizations and activists and educators take in their attempt to work towards social, environmental, and economic justice. The last 4 years, we focused on the theme of decolonization. And as we will talk about throughout this conference, decolonizing economics, this is an explicit challenge really to challenge ourselves to center indigenous wisdom, to center indigenous perspectives, and center knowledges. Decolonization for us is not a metaphor, it's really a path towards justice, towards social and political and economic justice. So this call for decolonizing economics is really acknowledging the fact that if we're going to do this and build a movement for reparative justice, we really need to understand first the extent to which colonialism has influenced and continues to influence our modern economy and our mindset. So this summit really aims to demonstrate real solutions to heal the land and to heal the people. And we're really trying to do this through educating participants about our economic system, the failings of putting profit over people, and the ways in which groups around the world are really working towards economic, social, and environmental justice. So this is the 5th year, and it comes at a historic juncture, right? College campuses all over the country are rising up and screaming loudly about the genocide that's taking place in Palestine right now. Students are calling for what they refer to as 3 Ds. And that is an open declaration for a ceasefire in Gaza. They're calling for our system, the CSU system, to urge the CSU system to call for that. The other is divest. They want full audits of investments that the university has and companies supporting the state of Israel. And they also want to de-escalate. And that's the removal of police from college campuses and the threat of police violence on our students and community members. Our faculty and campus community has been screaming loudly here, denouncing our campus president for the call of using physical violence by police and the deployment of extreme tactics to surveil students, escalate tensions, and criminalize free speech. For just calling for the ceasefire in Gaza and divestment. So once again, and we'll talk more about this, I'm sure, the young are leading the way, raising their voice in unison around the clock and saying this generation will not be complicit in genocide. So despite the riot police mobilizing here 2 nights ago, where arrests are made, campus was cleared, we're continuing to educate and organize for social change. And this summit is just another attempt to do this. Thanks, David. And
Thank you, Tony, for the powerful words. And I am so grateful for you. And I can't wait to get into the deeper conversation. Our final panelist for this opening session is Miki'ala Catalfano. Miki'ala serves as the co-director of Native Roots Network, an indigenous-led effort to use solidarity economy here in what is now known as Shasta County, California. Native Roots Network advances indigenous-led regenerative community development. She is a community organizer. She is an artist. She's a designer. She's a connector. And once again, a personal friend. Miki'ala Catalfano, welcome to the Decolonizing Economics Summit.
Mahalo, David. Aloha kako, everyone. Miki'ala ko'inoa no Hawaii maiawa ka no hoau I Kaliponi. Hello, everyone. I am Miki'ala. I am Native Hawaiian from Hawaii, but I live here in Puil de Palm in Wintu Territory in far Northern California. David asked me to join today to talk about, like, why is it important that we're doing this? And first of all, I really respect, and it's hard to follow Tony and Marnie with some of the things that they had said, but I think of myself as a human being doing this work because it needs to be done. And so I'm here because Native Roots Network takes the position that we must all work together. Time is not on our side, and the stakes are high. The diversity of approaches we can use together will make us much stronger. And more importantly, and others have spoken to this point, Indigenous leadership must be a primary component of our movements. Indigenous life ways have helped our communities survive. You know, we were never meant to survive, but we persevered. Not unscathed, but we're still here. And to us, relationship is key. Relationship to land, relationship to other people, and relationship to those who are working in this transition. Decoupling from capitalist-created individualism, unlearning wealth accumulation logics, and learning the reciprocity in community sharing. I do not speak for all Indigenous communities, but I see it as a Kanaka Maoli, as our kuleana, as our responsibility to ours and other communities to lead with what we know has helped us survive attempted genocide, persecution, invisibilization, criminalization, disinvestment, and utter disregard. We are all experiencing and bearing witness to these things tenfold right now in Palestine, on college campuses, in our communities. So we must continue to resist, but we must also build. We're here to build with you all. For us, for you, and for those who will otherwise be casualties of a crumbling system. And how are we doing this? So we're advancing an Indigenous-led economic framework to create a sustainable, culturally centered, community-based, regenerative economic development center called El Kulus, Wintu for the Granary. And this space, like other spaces that have grown in other communities, will fulfill community needs to have a community center for healing. We need healing. For learning, for meeting, for organizing and gathering, and to have a safe haven, a place to go in times of crisis. These are the things that we're doing because we believe that at the core, if we take care of the land and each other, the land will take care of us and we will be okay. So I am honored to be here and to be among the friends of David, and among those others of you who I've come to know, and I'm so honored to work with. So thank you for having me here.
Thank you so very much, Miki'ala. Powerful words, and I can't wait to get into a deeper conversation amongst the panelists. But before we get there, It is my honor to bring forward Miki'ala Walters, who is one of the core organizers. In fact, I just need to lift up Miki'ala as literally the coordinator of this entire summit. Miki'ala is a lecturer at politics in the Department of Politics at Cal Poly Humboldt. She's also on the board of directors of the California Faculty Association, really rolling in deep with us at this Decolonizing Economics Summit. And I have to say it once again, a personal friend of mine, Miki'ala. You're going to give us some of the logistics for the course of not just today, but our entire 3 days together.
Thank you so much, David, and thank you so much for everyone who's been speaking. I'm going to keep this really brief because everything that y'all just touched on already has moved me so much, and I know that everyone is eager to get into the conversation. So there's just a couple of things that I wanted to share with all of y'all who are zooming in from so many different spaces to join us for Decolonizing Economics 2024. We are so grateful to have your participation, and we have a couple of different things that we've included this year that will hopefully help us have even deeper moments of connection with each other. Of course, we have our 15 sessions over the next 3 days. We're exploring a lot of different topics, but you'll also see in your Zoom links for today at the bottom of day 1, we also have a Zoom social room. They'll be open from 12 to 5 Pacific Standard Time. And so if you are looking for areas to just debrief and connect, please feel free to drop in there. We'll be kind of jumping in at different points throughout the afternoon in between sessions, but could be an opportunity for y'all to meet with each other and see who's hanging out in the Zoom social room. So it's just an opportunity for you to be connecting in that space. And we'll have a different room that's available for all 3 days. So that'll be open 12 to 5 each day. We also have a little resource that we're using called Padlet. It's an opportunity for you to be sharing some of your thoughts, feelings, questions, things that are emerging for you throughout the day. We'll have one for each day as well. Also, this is going to be sent to you when you receive your Zoom links, and Jack is adding that to the chat for us right now as well. So feel free to use this. This is just an interactive resource where we can kind of be capturing all of the sort of things that are emerging and blossoming for us over the 3 days of conversation with one another. So please feel free to use that. And just thank you all for being here. I'll pass it back to you, David. But if there are any logistical questions that y'all have, make sure that you're reaching out to us through email. Are here to support you to make sure that everything is as seamless as possible for you in joining our conference this year. I thank y'all for being here.
Thank you, Miki'ala. And I'm going to ask Jack, our tech wizard, to bring all 3 of the other panelists to join me on the screen. A reminder that we are doing this live, of course, and we've got Marnie Atkins, we've got Miki'ala Catalfano, we've got Tony Silvaggio, and we've got me, David Cobb. So what we're going to do now is just have a conversation amongst the 4 of us, and we're going to invite folks who are participating live to use and utilize the chat. If you would like to make a comment or ask a question, we'll be harvesting that through the course of the day. I also want to remind everyone that we are doing 3 full days. Miki'ala mentioned that, but there are 15 sessions of the course of the next 3 days. They are rich, they are powerful. We will, at the conclusion of this, just sort of go through an overview of what's coming next. But right now, I want to just invite my dear friends and colleagues and comrades to have a conversation amongst the 4 of us about this opening session in this historic moment. And so this is really just open space for the 4 of us to really have a dialogue with the idea that we know that there are literally thousands of people watching us have this conversation, not to put anybody, make anybody nervous, but this is an important moment in time, and us coming together to both resist and build, to quote Miki'ala, I think is really important. So I'll just open the space to see what are each of you thinking. Marnie?
I think that we are allowed to disagree without disparaging people, without without disrespecting people, without being racist and biased. And I think that we forget that and instead use, some of the tools in our toolkit um, to put people down for maybe the jobs that they have to do because they don't have a choice, which also leads into this idea of decolonization of the economy. What does that look like if we are all owners of our resources, of our local resources, so that it doesn't have to travel far? What does that look like? How is it that we have enough? So when you have to go to work and you have to get a paycheck in order to pay your rent, in order to buy your food, and then folks come along and try to, disrespect you for doing that job. That's really all that you're doing. I'm specifically talking about the Blue Lake Rancheria article that was put out recently on a local platform here, and how they've been uh, under, I guess, phone attack, meaning like just phone call after phone call after phone call, so they can't do any business, and because allegedly they were housing um, some of the state police that were here. Uh, I don't know. I don't know. I don't see the register, right, of the hotel, so I don't know. But if that's true, then what? Vote with your money, I guess. Don't instead of, I guess, um, disparaging those employees that have to like answer the phone and make book reservations and clean the rooms and sweep the parking lot. Uh, you know, they also are in a similar predicament in that they have to work for their money in order to pay the bills and buy food for their families. And so that concerns me. But ultimately, um, whole generations are being lost in Palestine right now. And I should be able to say that and not be viewed as anti-Semitic, because I'm not. And I should be able to hurt when I hear of genocide happening on this planet, to anyone, because I'm a descendant of survivors. You know, um, had my ancestors not zigged when they could have zagged, and I could not be here today. That's how precarious it was to be a native person on this continent back, uh, when, in the 1800s, let's say locally. Um, and by luck, I'm here and I'm able to be here with you all today. And I don't want that for anyone. I don't want that for anyone in the whole wide world. Um, and so that hurts my heart to see, these attacks, and especially because of the trauma that the survivors will feel, not just for their lifetime, but for generations. This is generational trauma that is being created right now. And not just the Palestinian people, but in the Israeli people too, because those people who are doing these military, taking military action, they will also be living with what they've done. And maybe right now they're young and think that they're all that in a bag of potato chips. But when they're older and they have more life experience and understand better maybe the value that life has, they might not feel so good anymore. And that concerns me because, again, we're creating historical trauma. And I don't want that for anyone. And I don't, I don't know what to do other than support what I can support and share my thoughts when I can share them. Um, yeah, anyway, those are the things that are on my mind right now. So I'm going to be quiet and hear what others have to say. Thank you.
Mahalo, Marnie, for sharing that. You're actually touching on something that immediately came to mind, because it isn't really possible for us to be considering building and moving forward without full acknowledgement of the gravity of what is happening. For the people in Palestine, for the people who are rising up against this genocide. And I just really am thinking and have been thinking about how we as human beings are trying to metabolize that, to move on, to continue to build. And coming together for something like this gathering, I saw somebody was using the Padlet. I'm so excited that moving past neoliberal capitalism has become a given for so many people. Me too. And that does bring me joy, even alongside some of this extreme pain. I am a mother. I cannot imagine. I cannot imagine. And so I think coming together in these spaces to see people who care is part of my mental well-being. And I urge people to take care of yourself as you're in these movements, doing this work, to find your allies and your friends who know also care, because that will strengthen you. It's been strengthening me. We as human beings do not want to see what's happening. And I thank you, Marnie, for raising the fact that the people who are doing harm are also causing harm to themselves and their families and their legacies. And so those are the things that are on my heart, to take care of yourself spiritually in whatever your way is. And while it seems wrong sometimes to laugh while we're doing this work, I see that as fuel for us to be able to continue, appropriately applied, of course. But we're here not because we're trying to build our organizations or do these things. We're here because we're human beings and we are gathering. And we are doing what we can. And we will do it at all costs. And it doesn't even matter, actually. If we fail, we must do this. And I am honored to do this alongside you. Take care of yourself in whatever way you need. If you're feeling like, oh my God, I can't remember this and I can't figure that out, you are experiencing real time the trauma of what's happening. Can you imagine what those families are experiencing? So I'm just here in solidarity. I just think that it's important for us to have these conversations. And I'm just grateful that all the folks who put this together to help us come together. Yes, we'll build forward, but we need each other. And I love seeing all of your faces. I love seeing that you care. So mahalo for that. That's what I would say right now.
I'm doing my best to keep it together right now, folks. The last 8 days here with the occupation, it's been this ride of pain and tears and joy, talking to our students who are leading right now. They're leading us. And they're making mistakes, as we all have. And they're pushing us. What I've seen is pushing faculty and the community to get more engaged in these decolonial struggles. Things that many have sort of sat on side of the fence and they, oh, decolonize. You know, they put it in their syllabus and they talk about it in class, but there's no action on it. They don't see it. Faculty have watched, I mean, we've all watched in horror the atrocities. And it's the students who really got us all to show up and get involved. And yeah, I have a lot to say about what's been taking place here. You know, they've got our union involved. I think this sort of connection, these connections between movements is essential and critical. And we're seeing these relationships developed over these decolonial struggles. And people can no longer sit by and watch. Right? David, I'm going to pass it on to you.
Darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. Martin Luther King Jr. said that in Loving Your Enemies. And like Tony, Marnie, and Miki'ala, I am feeling incredibly moved and emotional in this moment, and I am doing my best. I am doing my best to show up, both as the moderator of this panel, but as a human being on planet Earth, while I see genocide, I see destruction, I see hatred. I don't know exactly what to do, but I'm doing my best to show up and be present. And I'm going to take a moment, take a breath, to remember that the word breath means to be. And I'm going to be with you all and say, Marnie, thank you for the observation of that we are witnessing trauma and the creation of generational trauma. I stand before you as a descendant of traumatizer and traumatized. My ancestors were last in right relationship in what is now called Ireland and Scotland before they were traumatized first by Roman Empire and then English Empire. See, the thing is, all empire sucks, right? All power over dominator relationships is terrible. It is not how we're supposed to be living. My ancestors were traumatized. They were living in right relationship with each other and the land, properly in balance with the land, playing their appropriate role, and they were driven off of that land. And they came to this continent, Turtle Island, and traumatized other humans who were living in right relationship on this land. So I could just shrink in shame, or I could defend it and say, oh, well, we had to do it. But instead, I'm going to be really candid and completely real and say, I am a descendant of traumatized and traumatizer. There's plenty of fucking trauma to go around. What we really need to do is come together and figure out how to be together properly, how we're supposed to be here. And I'm going to also acknowledge, Tony, thank you for mentioning the mistakes that we're all making, because it gives me the opportunity to bring my mama, Southern for grandmother, who helped to raise me. And anytime I can bring her onto this material plane, it gives me strength and power, because she taught me this. We are all better than the mistakes that we make. We're going to make mistakes. The question is not if we make a mistake, it is when we make a mistake. Are we going to have the courage to acknowledge it, to grapple with it, and to do better? And Miki'ala, I'm going to turn to you last to simply react and reflect. And thank you so much for opening up the opportunity for me to get super real with my own feelings, because I was so in my head about the work that I needed to do and my responsibility to do well by all of these folks who are listening and watching us now. And you gave me the opportunity to remind myself that it's okay to be emotional, and that taps into my spiritual power, and that weeping and crying is not something that I should be ashamed of, but it's actually part of who I am. So I just want to thank you so much for that.
Mahalo, David. I was looking at our faces, and I noticed, I said earlier, I'm just a human doing this work because it needs to be done. And I think I wear this, it's a pine nut, and I love it because of its potentiality, because of its connection to the people who have welcomed me, who I work alongside with, and we are all seeds. And we can, whether we plant them or not, something's going to grow. And will it be good? Will it help others? I wear that to remind myself. I'm just a simple human being. And I'm standing up here and doing this. And thank you, Tony, for pointing out the mistakes. Because really, we don't have to be a professor or any of these other kinds of things in order to do this work. Because there's so much of it that needs to be done. I think we were trained to think that somebody else was going to take care of some of those things. And there were times when maybe some of that did happen. But what we are seeing is full scale crumbling. And so everyone has a place. If you feel so moved, and let me tell you, doing this work really truly has helped my mental well-being. It's really the only thing that's keeping me sane, is to be working with all of you. So I would say, if you're thinking like, man, I don't have enough, I don't know enough, I can't say enough, you don't need to know all the things. Just jump in. It's like luau mentality. In Hawaii, you just go in there, actually, that's what I did here when I first came to Northern California. Go work in the kitchen with the ladies and have them boss you around. And then you're in relationship real fast. And then, and you find your place. I'm telling you, you all have a place. I'm just so happy to see so many of you here. That's what I've got for right now. I'm trying to think of something else to say, but really that's it. I'm just a simple human being doing the work.
Thank you, Miki'ala, because this conversation is also reminding everything is connected, right? Everything is connected. And we are in a conjuncture. And for folks who may not be familiar with that term, I'm going to invite you, Tony, into the conversation, because it makes me think of Antonio Gramsci, who said, "The old world is dying. The new world is struggling to be born. Now is the time of monsters." And to me, this notion of conjuncture and what that means, we can break it down without dumbing it down, right? You don't have to be a professor or an intellectual to understand that, because I know working class people can understand as long as we just talk to them in ordinary language. I believe in the organic intellectual of the working class. And so, Tony, I'm going to invite you to talk a little bit about, when you mentioned the word conjuncture, what did you mean by conjuncture? And you are muted, Tony.
Historical moment, my friend, right? Where we see transformation in the way that we think, the transformation in social movements, the transformation in our relationship to each other and the land. Right now, this is a moment, my friends. And as I pointed out, I think the students here, the young generation here, is essential to this moment, and that we are in a way, we must get involved in this. Um, yeah. Um, I
Grum-
think, yeah.
Gramsci said, in moments of conjuncture, it is our responsibility to attend to the moment. And that's what I think this is. We are seeing an effort to break through a power over dominator extractive worldview. And I'm not going to say create a new one. I'm going to say return to the power with balanced regenerative worldview that is the indigenous worldview. And a reminder, and Marnie, you've said this to me before, that we are all descendants of indigenous people.
We're all
Every
tribal
human,
people.
we're
Yeah.
all originally tribal people. We need
Yep.
to get back to that. And you talked about, and I will say this too, Marty. I remember I used to say I am an uninvited guest on Wiyot ancestral territory, and I'm trying to learn to be a good guest because my mama, who I mentioned earlier, my papa too, they taught me to be a good guest. So if I am ever have a meal at your home, and some of you on this call and who are watching know for a fact, I'll offer to wash the dishes every single time because my mama and my mama taught me that. If I stay overnight at your home, I'm going to offer, should I strip the sheets or make the bed? I know how to be a good guest as a human to other humans. But mama and mama didn't teach me to be a good guest with land and to land because they didn't know. And it pains me as a mama's boy who loves and adores my mama. Everybody who knows me knows that that'll come up. If you talk to me long enough, that's going to come up. I love my mama, but it pains me that she didn't teach me that because she didn't know it. And one of the things that you mentioned, Marnie, was the indigenous worldview of us all just taking care of each other collectively together. And I want to invite you to speak a little more on that because to me, that is the essence of what a post-capitalist world would look like.
Yeah, thank you. I was just taking notes. I was like, oh, writing all these notes down from Miki'ala and Tony, what they were saying. And you too. I was like, oh, I haven't heard Gramsci in so long. I was like, whoop, whoop. Hegemony. Um, I went to grad school, and so I was the social theorist I had never heard of. And he was one of the ones that wrote in a way that I could understand. He made it accessible to me, whereas some of those other social theorists, they were just, So if we put information in accessible, if we put information and knowledge in an accessible format, imagine the power that the people would have. Because a lot of the theorists, they got it right, but they don't know how to apply it. And we do. We know how to apply it. Tribal people, whether you're indigenous on this continent or from somewhere else, you know how to apply it. You just have to remember. Um, you know, Europeans have been segregated from their traditional ways of knowing, of living in balance with their landscapes, because of right wars and turmoil and being taken over by different empires and then finally having to leave. But you can be a good neighbor and live here and remember. And when you do that, what you're doing is you're supporting those efforts of tribes for um, to reestablish connections with land, whether that's the land back movement, whether that's access to, supporting efforts for access to public lands so that Native peoples can get back on the landscape to take care of it, to live in that reciprocal relationship that we need to live in. And what I mean by that is, um, there are plants on my homelands that love to be fussed with. That, if you see for example, if you see a huge hazel bush that's just like, oh, that's so cool, look at it, it's all just kind of going everywhere. That's not how it likes to live. It loves to be fussed with. It loves to be pruned. It likes to be cut back. It likes to have some burning on it, because then it actually thrives and becomes large. But then you get these wonderful straight sticks, right? Straight branches that you could then use to weave. That if I take care of that hazel, then it takes care of me. And then I can then continue to take care of it. And I think the other thing that's, I can't remember now who said it, but we can't all know everything. That, like, it's just not in a human capacity for me to have everything. That's why when you live in community with someone, or you know, whether it's your family, your tribal community, or the larger neighboring community, I am relying on you to know what I can't know, because my brain doesn't have that capacity. You know, I know so much, and it doesn't have room for a lot more. And I still got years to go. So I rely on you, and that's why I think not only the sharing of knowledge, but the sharing of location, living with each other in that respectful, restorative, um, collaborative community. That is important. Um, I don't know. Those are just some of the things I think about, David, when we were kind of gabbing a little bit. That I want people to remember that we're all tribal from somewhere. We're all indigenous from somewhere. We just have to remember how to live in that way. Um, and that's why, like, the idea of, socialism and economics is kind of, we don't talk about that, right? It's always, I told you this the other day. I saw a bumper sticker that says socialism sucks. And I'm like, yeah, but you're not talking about, the socialism that I would like to see, because foundationally it's own things are owned communally. And that's exactly how tribal people, that's how we out people were, and in my mind should be. But we aren't, right? We've been in a way assimilated through that Western mind view. I would like to bring that back, that idea of owning things communally. And so we do make those efforts with reclaiming land so that it can be communal again. So we try to get these like spots of land back that then we make into a communal location for people to come on the landscape and do what we need to do with the plants and the animals and the water. And I think we need more of that, because then that spreads out into the community, and I think brings wellness and happiness to us all. I hope. That's my hope anyway. Okay, that's enough.
I'd like to just say just a little bit about the moment, the crisis moment right now, and sort of revisit that question, David, about the conjuncture. This is an opportunity. I think crisis breeds opportunities for us to work together and develop strategies, and to link movements, right? I think young people know that this system is not working. It's not working for people, right? I mean, it's evident, and we're seeing it become part of the common sort of consciousness. Again, we'll go back to the class consciousness of Marx, right? That people recognize that my dollar's not going far. My rent is up, right? I can't afford to send my kid to school or daycare, right? I mean, it is getting piled on piled on piled. And then we have the wars and the genocides. We have all of these crises happening right now in this moment. And I think this is something that presents us with opportunities, right? To educate, to connect with our movements, create alliances and coalitions with a right mindset, not the capitalist mindset of getting more resources for our work, right? But creating a better planet and better relationships with one another. It's I think we have to really interrogate this question and see how best we can support each other in our struggles too at this moment. Yeah, I could speak about specific examples of what we've done so far in this here at our institution and how that moment is sort of unfolding later or at a different panel.
Thank you. I appreciate very much, and I've been thinking too about how our outrage can be fuel for what we're doing. How this discomfort is actually very helpful for us to get out of our day-to-day, because in some ways, if it was just comfortable enough, would we change? So in this situation, I think it's certainly not desirable, but it's an opportunity. I agree completely. Thank you for that. I know somebody, Van, I'm not sure if I'm saying that right, in the chat said that they'd like to hear, from us, what does decolonizing economics mean, and what does it or can it look like? And I would say from our perspective, it's not a one size fits all situation. It's really relative to the space that you're working in. And I think it's also very important, the whole idea of re-indigenization and the fact that you may not be what you would self-identify as native, and how do we interact with the land. Some of those things I think are very uncomfortable, and we all have our personal work to do around those things. And that is part of decolonizing economics, is to do that personal work, is to take care of, if you don't know where you're from because nobody taught you, then go find out you have resources to do that, versus adopting somebody else's culture because you have a rich culture of your own that can tie in with those cultures where you live and do that work there. I want to point out too, I am Kanaka Maoli, I'm Native Hawaiian from Hawaii, and I do this work as a tradition-based human, but I'm not on my homelands. And those are for the traditional culture bearers of that land. And anything that I do in the form of decolonizing any economy is with that real clear understanding that I live in a community that is not my homeland, and it is my kuleana. And I was taught in my homeland that what I must do is leave where I am better than when I found it, and to work in that way. And so I do it in that way. So if you ever feel like, wow, how can I even do that? It's not my place. There's a way, you tie in with those people, help those people. And what can that look like? And then that's part of decolonizing economics. And it's like a weird thing to unpack, right? Like, what the heck does that mean? Economy, we think of like money. Economy is home. Economy is this place where you are. And all the systems that we see crumbling around us, we're building new. We're building the next, maybe new is not the word, next system. And so what does that look like? Man, that looks like so many different things depending on where you're at. For us, we're advancing, like I said, an economic framework. And what that means for us is we're creating a community center. We're creating a community center that will provide space to incubate and support micro manufacturing and community self-provisioning. That looks like building solar microgrids and having community generated energy, and helping our people learn how to not just be the recipients of those things, but the deliverer of those things, and in control of those things for the community, but then to also then be able to reach out and to help others do that. And so for us, there are components that we knew we wanted to make sure are part of El Kulus, that's Wintu for the word granary. And the reason we picked that is because when, acorn as a primary sustenance, as I have been taught, it is here in Northern California. And then the acorns would be gathered, and then throughout the year, the sustenance could then be accessed. And so that's why we called it El Kulus. One of our Wintu leaders within Native Roots Network named it that. And at El Kulus, it would be a community healing arts place. As we were going through this process, we knew, we talked about pain, we talked about those things. Many of us are still seeing things happening to our people. We're over incarcerated. We have health disparities that are just through the roof. Yes, we have keys, but we're also trying to heal. So that center has meaning for us to have it be a healing place for us, a place of safety, because hurt people hurt people. And so we are intentionally creating space where people can come in and they're safe there. Arts and culture, we need to express. We need to express our pain. We need to express our joy, our innovative thinking, what it is that we want to create. We need to grow our own food. So we'll be growing our own food. We're going to be repairing the land. We're going to be taking care of this land in a way that the people who have been on it, maybe they just didn't know how. And that means developing traditional ecological knowledge, TEK, land management. And that means planting native plants. And then looking forward into the future for that self-provisioning, looking at how we can create the things that we need through digital lab. And then, hey, cooperatives, because frankly, the boss idea is an old idea. Democratic leadership is something that is really, really important to us in the work that we're doing. And all of this on top of land, without which we cannot do this work. So for us, it's actually today we are signing papers on a piece of land to establish our Indigenous-led community land trust, a very small but really huge thing for the community here. And that's what it looks like to us here. Very different, I'm sure, elsewhere. I leave it there.
We've got a lively chat going, and so that's fantastic. I want to encourage folks to also use the Padlet. And Marnie and Tony, I'll invite you each to respond to that provocative question, what does decolonization mean to you? And to set you up, I'll just answer it really quickly myself to say this. I am a guest on Wiyot ancestral territory. So I'm learning how to be a good guest here from the Wiyot people that I have come to know. And I want to be really transparent here. I don't think that if you're a Wiyot enrollee that you have some kind of magical power. I don't romanticize that.
Thank you.
What I say is that there is an indigenous worldview.
Yeah.
And that it is more likely that Wiyot people are still connected to that indigenous worldview because it is more recent for them. But I know plenty of Wiyot people that I actually kind of say, you know, I don't wish any ill, but I kind of stay away from. And, you know, like, and again, like, because there's, you know what, guess what? Wiyot people are people.
Yeah.
And it's not that they're magic. It's not that they're necessary, like, but the point is, it's an indigenous worldview. So for me, the decolonization is an intentional effort to deprogram myself from a culture of power over domination and extraction, which is the dominant culture, and try to do my best to get back to what is my birthright, to be in relationship, reciprocal. And it's not even about rights. It's about a reciprocal set of responsibilities, and that I have not only to other humans, but also to the redwood trees and the Douglas firs and the salmon and the bear. Like, I actually am supposed to be in that relationship. And so I'm doing my best to figure it out. But I'll tell you this, economics means the management of the home, as Miki'ala so beautifully reminded us. And we're doing a terrible job collectively as a society of managing our home. We're destroying Mother Earth faster than she can replenish herself. So for me, the idea of decolonizing economics means creating new systems to meet human needs objectively, materially, for housing, for food, for shelter, for art and culture, because that's a human need too. All of these things, but to do it collectively and cooperatively, and to do my best to center love and compassion and kindness while I do it. So that's how I think about what decolonization means to me. Then I'll invite Marnie and Tony to share your thoughts.
Well, you both of you have just said most of the things that I absolutely 100% agree with. And I'm really upset that you pulled back the curtain, and now I can't come out with my fairy wand and fix it all as an Indigenous person. But thank you for not romanticizing me. But yeah, I mean, I'm a learner too. I'm a relearner of, my relationship with my ancestral lands was interrupted. And so I've been going through reestablishing that relationship with the land and the water and the plants and animals, and that's work that I have to do. Now I know mechanically the things that I need to do, but I have to I can yeah, I have to date the land. I have to, woo the water, right? It's like I have to say, "Hey, remember me?" Put out my little dating app and be like, "Hi, plants. I'm super cool and I can pluck you and help you grow strong." And I don't know, I'm being silly, but I that's how I kind of look at it is I've got to do my part so that they all know that they want me, that these relations know that I'm here for them, and again, and that I'm coming back home. But I wanted to say one of the things that I very much like is the idea of a guaranteed minimum income. Could you imagine? Yeah, could you imagine like the level of health, the health benefits that it would create if you are going to a job that maybe you don't like or that you do like, but it's like so much stress, and that stress on your heart and your brain and your soul and your spirit. um Maybe if you got a guaranteed minimum income, you wouldn't have to work as many hours, so then your engagement with that position is more meaningful and doesn't tax you and your body. Imagine the creativity that could come out if I didn't have to work, three jobs and try to pay the bills, that I just needed one. And I could, and then I could weave. Like, oh my God, that would be amazing. I 100% that I'm trying very hard in my own life to support local and buy local. Oftentimes some of that food is still out of my price range, but when I can afford it, I do afford it. And I think that's a small step. That's one thing, right? We don't have to like plug our nose and jump into the deep end. We can take these small steps that are, I think, will cumulatively be meaningful. The cooperatives, heck yeah, whoop whoop. I'm all about that. Like, can we cooperate food? Can we cooperate shelter? Can we cooperate rides? And that leads me into reducing our consumption. Right now on this coast, we're as a community trying to figure out if we want offshore wind farms here. And when I go to these meetings, I hear, oh, we have a portfolio of all of these things that will help address electric consumption, and our reliance on fossil fuels. And they are wind and solar and hydrology and nuclear and burnables or whatever, right? They have a portfolio. Nowhere in that portfolio is reduce consumption. Nowhere. I'm the only one saying that, although that's not true. I have been reading locally in the comments. Sometimes don't read the comments, y'all, because it'll hurt your heart and your brain. But this time I did, and there were people in the comments going, reduce consumption. I'm like, yes, thank goodness there's folks out there that agree with that. So we have to reduce our consumption, not just on fossil fuels, plastics. right? Like, let's start buying things that are in aluminum and in glass containers. Let's reuse our, these containers as much as we can. Plastic is not, I mean, it's recyclable, not all of it, some of it, depending on where you are, right? So let's try to reduce that. And then I believe in a roof and warmth for all. Not all of us can manage a home. We're not ready for a home, we're not ready for an apartment, but maybe a tent with a roof that keeps that tent dry and a warming area and some, a place to go potty at all hours of the night, that doesn't get locked up. When staff go home. I mean, I think going to the bathroom is a human right. Being able to wash your hands or wash up is a human right. And so, some sort of a roof and warmth and food for all. And the other thing for me is, vote for me for president. I say this to my students all the time. But I'm like, education for all. Like, I don't, the first degree's on us, and then after that, if you feel like you want to get a master's or a PhD, okay, fine. Like, maybe, but they're not going to be predatory loans. But if I would, the whole thing, education should be free, medical care should be free. It's a human right. So to me, that's what things look like for me in my world. Because again, if you go back to my traditions, we collectively owned everything. Regalia was one thing that, sometimes wasn't. That was often family owned. Um, but we grew, we gathered, we we created whatever for everyone, and we shared. If you needed something and I had it, here it is. I don't expect anything in return. You needed it. Here it is. I would like to see that. I would like to see that more in our world, and through those relationship building. So that's my view, and I'm gonna be quiet now. Thank you.
Well, I want to thank everybody for sharing that, and I echo all of what's been said. I don't really have anything really else to add in terms of how I see decolonizing. My decolonization process really is trying to understand this context in which colonialism really influences and continues to influence everything we do in our modern economy and mindset. And you brought up a great example, Marnie, of the Off-Wind Project. I don't know how much I have to scream to the top of my lungs about this, right? There's no science that's been done to the critters in the wilderness that is the ocean floor. That people are arguing it's safe. We're going to do it because we need growth. So it's questioning that growth model, right? And we're not even addressing the consumption piece. So that decolonizing piece for me is really, we have to interrogate how it just embeds in our psyche, every inch of our mind, right? This growth, profit over people model. And I think it is a great example, this project, where people are just saying the wilderness of the ocean that we do not know, that deserves to live, it's okay to be sacrificed, right? So that's one. The other piece is, again, action, right? I mean, it's really the action component that we really have to stress here, is acting on this awareness and trying our best to work in solidarity with one another. In our community, we did that. We put that together during another wind project, the Terragen Wind Project, right? That folks may know, which we thought we would lose, right? But we all came together, right? And supported each other to stop a wind project on ancestral Wiyot land, right? And I think that this sort of decolonization of the economic system, decolonizing economics for us, right? This is something that is an ongoing process, right? It is not something that we're stopping, we're ending, and it's hard. I have a 4-year-old, right? And talking about this with my 4-year-old, trying to get him to recognize and me to recognize how best to ensure that he is not polluted with this mindset, right? Of exploitation. Yes. So I look at it at the time, I'm gonna stop here, and we have so many panels. The next panel, right, is gonna really interrogate this question. So I really want folks to try your best to get on to the next panel. And I'm gonna pass the mic to David to maybe
Yep. Thank
move
you,
up.
Tony. So yes, you've taken the words right out of my mouth, which is a reminder that this is the opening session in 15 sessions, 3 full days of going deep together. And the very next session is led by Native Roots Network on the question, what do we mean by decolonization? So that question is going to go deep. Because I'm looking at the time, our time is flying by in rich conversation. I'm going to invite Miki'ala, then Marnie, then Tony for any closing thoughts to this first panel on decolonizing economics from Earth Day to May Day. Miki'ala?
As soon as you said that, I had a thought, and I was like, I want to say this thing, and then you said that, and it was gone. I think what I want to do with this last minute is to say, hats off to our youth. I think what they are doing and leading and sharing with us is also decolonizing, because we tend to say we're supposed to put information into you and you are an empty vessel, and that is not true. And in fact, we need the energy of those youth, and they need to be supported. And so everything that we can do to do that, I'm all in. And I just really want to make sure that we recognize the sacrifices that they're making to help others. Thanks. That's what I would say.
I think what I would like to say is please remember that we are people with feelings, with families, with hopes and dreams, and that no one should be subjected to war, no matter what country it's in, because we've got a few of them going on, right? Because that is what divides us. That's one of the things that divides us. And at this time, we shouldn't be divided when, we have a world to take care of. We have a world to fix. And that's one of the responsibilities of Wiyot people, is to hold ceremony to help fix the world, to pray for the world. And please remember, we're all people, and be sure to take care of yourselves. And thank you for all you do. Thank you for being here.
I'd like to add to that and just tell folks to celebrate right now. Celebrate this opportunity here at the conference to come together and talk about the work that we're doing. We have a space right now here to really share our ideas and collaborate across movements, issues, and really this opportunity to create the next steps, right? What are we going to do? The action component to all of our work here. And I just want to encourage us to, yes, to think about this moment as a celebration.
Thank you, Tony. Thank you, Miki'ala. Thank you, Marnie. And thank you, the viewer, listener, for being here and being part of this. I am reminded a dear friend, Taj James, is an organizer, a strategist, and a poet. And one of his poems says, "Follow the ones who know the way." And the reason that I am so grateful for the indigenous people who have helped to mentor and love me and help me is because they know the way back to the indigenous worldview and a cosmology. Because unlimited growth on a finite planet is the ideology of the cancer cell. Capitalism will destroy this planet if we do not interrupt it and return to a proper balance. I also want to, again, lift up Marnie because she said it so beautifully, but I'll say in my own words, from my view, if there is anything that is a human need, then it should be a human right. We should have a society that understands the social, political, economic system that says food is a need to survive, so it should be a human right, and our social, political, and economic systems should be designed accordingly. Clean air to breathe, clean water to drink, the ability to celebrate art and culture, a home or some version of shelter. These are human rights, and our society needs to be completely reorganized. That's why I'm a revolutionary. Now, I'm a peaceful revolutionary, but I am a revolutionary because I think we have to restructure our entire society. And it's not just policies, although we'll be going deep on many policies over the next 3 days together. But I want to say it is a mindset, an invitation to remember that there is an ability to belong without othering. How can we find the humanity in each other and our proper way forward? That is the challenge of what decolonizing economics would mean. I want to thank you all for joining this panel. I want to thank, again, KMUD News for simulcasting live. I want to thank Free Speech TV for recording this and publishing it out so we know that literally hundreds of thousands of people are viewing. I want to thank all of our many, many sponsors. Go to the website decolonizingeconomicsummit.org and you'll see it. But most importantly, I want to thank you, the person listening to my voice or looking at me and the rest of the panelists now, for whatever you're doing and whatever you're going to do. Remember, we got this because we got each other. Peace.